You are listening to the Outside the Boards podcast. I'm Danny O'Leary. For most of my professional career, I have worked in mainstream sports for some of the world's leading sports organizations and properties and blue chip brands, helping to create award-winning omni-channel marketing campaigns, result-driven sales strategies, and impactful brand building initiatives. But all that work doesn't compare to the fun, excitement, and challenges I've been fortunate to experience working for the king of all sports, polo. For nearly a decade, I've put my heart and ambition into helping advance the sport of polo. I've made lifelong friendships, met some incredible people, traveled to memorable polo destinations, and heard the craziest stories. My goal is to share these people, places, and stories with you and provide a unique behind-the-scenes perspective of the game that breaks all the common stereotypes, all while discussing key issues affecting the sport today and the constructive sharing of ideas, insights, solutions, and best case studies for the purpose of advancing polo globally. Every week, I will have honest conversations with polo industry leaders, enthusiasts, and awe-inspiring people who make this sport great and fun to be around. I hope through their knowledge and their unique perspectives, they will motivate and inspire you. Together, we will explore ways you can make small tweaks to boost your polo business, whether you are a club, event, team, or player, that will amount to big changes in revenue, participation, attendance, and exposure. Saddle up. Welcome to Outside the Boards with me, Daniel Leary. Hi everyone, Danny O'Leary here. Hope you are all well and you had a great start to the new year. The United States High Goal season is underway, so I hope you have subscribed and started to tune into Global Polo TV to watch the action. This is our final episode of Outside the Board Season 1 podcast, and I want to thank the thousands of people who have listened and the many people in the polo community who have expressed their support and guidance in developing this program. Season 2 is in the works, and we have a great lineup of guests. On this episode of Outside the Boards, I had the pleasure of interviewing United States Polo Association Rocky Mountain Circuit Governor and arguably one of the leading female polo players of her generation, the beautiful and talented Erica Gandomcar-Sachs. Born of a polo player and immersed in the sport from day one, Erica personifies polo and is considerably one of its most passionate ambassadors. Arguably the leading female polo player of her generation, she started riding horses at age 2, playing polo at age 8, and competing in tournaments at the age of 10. Erica's parents, John and Chris Gandomcar, founded Cottonwood Riding Club, home of the Denver Polo Club, in 1982. They raised Erica in the sport and immersed her in the lifestyle and business of polo. Erica embraces their family history and legacy with pride while traveling the world and competing professionally. A master of multitasking, Erica promotes polo as both a player and a manager of the Cottonwood Riding Club, which has become legendary within the Rocky Mountain region. Erica and her sister Tara now continue the legacy her parents started. With grand dreams, the legacy projects has started to come to life. Together, the two sisters are building an inclusive, multi-generational equestrian community to encourage the surrounding communities to fall in love with horses and agricultural lifestyle. Erica studied and played intercollegiate polo at Colorado State University, earning regional all-star and all-American status each of the 4 years she played for the team. In her first year, CSU won the regional championship and placed second in the national championships. She has won many top tournaments, including a few MVPs. One of her horses became a top polo pony in Argentina and has been cloned several times. She just recently won USPA Woman of the Year for all her efforts within polo, and more specifically, women's polo. Erica has been a USPA Circuit Governor since 2014, sits on many committees, started 3 charitable foundations, and continues to be an incredible wife, mother, and horse trainer. Her vision for the future of polo is grand, and she continues to bring horses and polo to everyone. I can assure you, Erica will be on this podcast again in the future, as she is a joy to talk with. So let's get started, everyone. Enjoy.
The polo player is like the modern day cowboy. Really, we're just happy to sit on a hay bale in our blue jeans and drink a Corona.
Exactly. And that's what I love about it. When I came into the sport 7 years ago, I remember when I was down there and I went to the US Open and it was glitz and glamour and there's pageantry and there's popping of champagne and Veuve Clicquot and people all dressed up. And, I remember going to the practices where Bob Janarvis was and hanging out with there, and it was totally laid back. I'm like,
this is what I love. I mean, coming from my college background and the Midwest and, Packers country and all that kind of stuff where we love our beer and brats.
Right.
It made me that much more attractive to polo because of those types of people that play it and take it seriously. It's just like, man, gosh, I can get used to this really, really fast.
That's what we say around here. I mean, honestly, for me, everybody puts their pants on the same way. It doesn't matter who you are or what you've done. But if you have this love of horses and this passion for polo, it doesn't matter who you are. We're all human at the end of the day, and so that's all. I love that. I mean, that's exactly like how you got into it, watching the games and then, really seeing the behind the scenes.
You'll never see me in a bow tie and a seersucker, just letting you that.
Yeah, exactly.
Never.
I think that's the fun part about polo is those two worlds, sort of the inside the boards and outside the boards, which is why I love your podcast title, Outside the Boards. That meaning goes so far because it's so different inside and outside the boards, these two different worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky Derby meets Packers tailgate.
Yeah.
Really
that's a good way to describe it. Absolutely. It really is. Maybe there's some cross-pollination to be done there. Maybe we do a Chicago Bears and Chicago Packers polo-themed matchup.
Right.
That'll introduce some blue-collar people into the world of polo, that's for sure.
Yep. Like I said, we all put our pants on the same way. It's
That gave me an idea before. So being that I'm from Badger country in Wisconsin and being in the Midwest, we're Big Ten country. We like our football, Michigan State, Michigan. And I was talking to, I forget who it was. I think it was Kareem. We were talking about intercollegiate polo and how big of a fan I was and how big of a fan I was when I was with the USPA. Because when you looked at the teams and the schools that they were associated with, those were big sports schools, big sports programs. Like UConn, for example.
Yep.
And I remember polo's team number of national championship was equivalent to the number of women's basketball championships, something crazy like that. It's like, Did you know this was in the backyard of your school? Probably not.
Probably not.
And when I put that map together, I was like, oh, there's something here. Like for Big Ten, for example, they love their sports and they have a lot of pride in it, whether it be club, football, basketball, track, and field. And their alumni associations are substantial, whatever corner of the United States that you go to, that there's something to be played off here in a big way to get normal people to start paying attention to polo.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's arena polo. So, you like the gridiron, you're going to like the gridiron of the arena because it's down and dirty still.
Yeah.
I know here in Chicago, we were toying around with the idea of doing like a Big Ten outdoor collegiate event where we would have like Wisconsin come down and play Michigan State, which is already a rivalry in itself.
Just add water and stir.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's just like, what? There's Michigan State and Wisconsin colors out here. We're playing polo.
Yeah.
The alumni associations in Chicago would get a thrill out of that. Maybe we can do that this year because isn't intercollegiate canceled this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think everybody's still in this flux of not knowing what to do. And then you're regulated in some parts and then you're not in other parts. And so I think it's very frustrating for those intercollegiate programs to move forward because you can't, the horses still have to eat and they still have to get work because everything could happen, tomorrow or the next month or something like that. But I think it's incredible to see the amount of intercollegiate players that either played, whether it was varsity, a competitive level, or JV or freshman. I actually thought about doing a tournament here, just an alumni tournament. Doesn't matter what college you're from, but just an intercollegiate alumni arena tournament. And so I just put some feelers out, and there are a ton of people in Colorado that played intercollegiate polo that I had no idea even tried polo, and it's such a strong program. I think that's what's tough about polo is that misconception. So you have these big schools like UConn and they're pumping so much money and effort and, all this stuff into their top 4 sports, whether it's football, basketball, volleyball kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. In the back door, there's this huge support of polo. And the people that come out of those programs are professionals and leaders and CEOs and CFOs and,
Yeah, big donors.
Well, yeah, and contributors to society. And so, they're lost. The colleges don't look at that. And I think just because it's that misconception.
A good example is polo being a club sport. Okay.
Yep.
Take example, collegiate rugby. Rugby is not an identified NCAA sport, but look how big it has grown.
Yeah.
It has its own league. There's Big Ten teams and so on and so forth, completely out of the realm of the NCAA, and it's taken off. Who's to say that polo intercollegiate can't take off either?
Right.
And there's other club sports. For all I know, there could be a Quidditch, league out there that's starting to popularize cornhole.
That's what I was just going to say. I was flipping through cable, and on the ESPN network, it was the National Cornhole Championships. And I was like, what? Really? I was like, you can have this on ESPN on a prime time Saturday, or I think it was like a Sunday or something like that. And we don't have polo? Come on, man. Like,
yeah. And now Ultimate Frisbee, probably. I mean, if they had the capabilities to buy out the Milwaukee Polo Club, come on.
I do. I think that's it. I think if we could tell people that you don't have to be a millionaire or anything like that to play polo, you could go and take a lesson once a week. I was just talking to a friend of mine who has a polo club in South Padre Island. And again, right? South Padre Island Polo Club. That's incredible. It's so fun, we were talking, and it doesn't matter what you have. You can spend $60 for your polo lesson, or, whatever it is around the globe, $60 to $100 a polo lesson, and you can play twice a month if you want to, that's way less expensive than a Starbucks addiction. And it's healthier, I think, too.
I got a Starbucks addiction this week. I got my caramel macchiato, I think, right here.
I'm sitting right here with the Starbucks. I can't lie.
So, Erica, you have an interesting background in your story. You're second generation only when it comes to polo, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And just in equestrian sports too, because your parents were both immigrants.
Yep. My dad was an immigrant. My dad's from Iran and my mom's from Iowa. And they actually both met here in Greeley, Colorado, which is super interesting. Both from big families, but both very independent. And dad's love for horses came from Iran. His father had a factory right on the other side of the wall of the racetrack and polo club in Tehran. And so when his dad was at work, he would hop the fence and go over to the track. And in the middle of the track, they had the polo field. And he just fell in love with horses and polo and the whole 9 yards, and left home at an early age. And he was actually getting his helicopter license here in Greeley when he met my mom. My mom is from small town Iowa. Her father was a vet, a large animal vet. And that's where her love of animals came into play. And we've been here about 39 years. This is our 39th year. And 39 years ago, they took a loan from grandma and grandpa and bought the facility that we have now, this main facility, Cottonwood Riding Club. Didn't really have dreams or aspirations of, I want to own a polo club and do all these things. It was really the American dream. Dad was working at a print shop. He didn't own the print shop. He didn't, it was minimum wage, blue collar, working hard, worked at the print shop. And my mom was working at Aetna Life Insurance, but they just loved horses. So they took a loan out from grandma and grandpa, and it was an old junkyard when they first bought it.
It was a big junkyard.
It was a big junkyard. Yeah. And, little by little and piece by piece, and smart business decisions and adapting and putting investments back into the business, they created what we have now, which is Cottonwood Riding Club, home of the Denver Polo Club. There's a few hundred horses and they're people. And there's a term we say around here, it's of horse you can. And really, if you can dream it up, we can make it happen. Everybody is here for the love of their horse. So we have all different disciplines. We do dressage, jumping, barrel racing. We've had some reiners. We've had some saddlebred, Arabs, cutting, really, you name it. We've had the discipline here, and everything from very beginner to very advanced. And the best part, one of our clients had described it, and we describe it this way, but it's interesting to hear somebody else say it. So we're right backed up against the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, and there's a lane, I don't know, about the size of a polo field. And you drive down the lane, and everything, even for me. I live and work here. But the second you drive down the lane, all your stress, whatever was sort of outside, it just goes away. And there's something special about this facility. It's incredible. So years and years ago, we used to have the polo fields here, and there was 4 polo fields. We would have visiting teams from all over the world. We had India, Pakistan, Hawaii, you name it, we had it. And all the quintessential polo player, famous polo players, Stuart Copeland, Mickey Dolenz, Sylvester Stallone, all of that stuff, it was all in the backyard. And again, mom and dad, it was just a passion for them.
Was there already an equestrian community there before you came?
No, that's a good question. So years and years ago, before mom and dad started elevating the spectator part of polo here in Colorado, it was just sort of cowboy polo. There was some old families that used to play. Lawrence Phipps, part of the Phipps family, the Fells, old families that would play polo.
Mm-hmm.
But it was ranch style polo. And that's honestly how dad started the field. It was up in the top of the lane in a field, and then eventually built the fields in the back. But it was ranch polo. But Denver and Colorado, people love coming here. And so I think that also helps sort of lend itself to having all those fun events and all those polo players come in. So there was a little bit of a polo scene, but nothing crazy, and definitely not like it is now.
Were you the first in your family to get involved in polo, or were your father and mother playing it before you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So dad actually played a little bit of polo when he was in Iran. So that's where his love came from. Mom loved horses, but never really played polo. She played polo for like 2 years. She went to England. She played with Carolyn Anye and played for a couple of years, had fun and played here and there. But her love was really that connection with the horse. So really it was just dad. My dad was the first one to put a polo mallet in my hand, and I loved it. I'm an adrenaline junkie at heart. So throw me out of a plane, race a fast motorcycle. That's great. And I just fell in love with polo.
So dressage, 100 jumper, set that aside. We're going all out here.
Yeah.
Did you even try the other ones or other disciplines or no?
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that. So I did. I tried jumping, and I did this and that. But the jumping back then, it wasn't a lot of jumpers. It was more hunters. And for me, the arbitrariness of being judged, and maybe you didn't have the fancy coat that was in for that year, or maybe your horse wasn't the color du jour that the judge liked. And for me, being judged, it didn't make sense. It wasn't a really true way to compete. It wasn't sort of black and white. It was arbitrary. And so I did not like the hunter jumper scene, and same kind of with the dressage. And polo, it's like math. You either win or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of black or white. But that team aspect of it, I love that. And the chess game, my mind works 100 miles an hour. And for polo, it keeps me busy. It keeps my mind going.
You have to be incredibly sharp.
Yeah. And so funny, to make my polo better, I've actually learned how to start riding again. And so for the past, on our off season here in Colorado, I've actually started jumping again. So between one of our trainers and my sister, who's an incredible trainer, they're teaching me how to jump. And I tell you, Daniel, it is so humbling to learn how to ride all over again.
How many siblings do you have?
I just have an older sister. So my sister and I, we make one great superhuman. Her holes I fill, and my holes she fills. And we run the business together. Mom and dad officially retired about 6 years ago. But really, we were running the business probably 12 years ago.
Now, does your sister play polo, or did she gravitate towards the other disciplines?
My sister tried polo, but she loves the green horses. She wasn't into team sports. She tried that in high school and stuff like that, and wasn't really into the team sport thing. But she loves the green horses. Mom and dad never handed us a made horse. We always had to make our own horses.
Mm-hmm.
And then unfortunately, that was part of the business, is once those horses became really good, they would get sold. And so My sister.
She's a quintessential cowgirl right there.
Yeah,
True
yeah,
rancher at heart.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so really this love of green horses and problem horses where the trainers from other facilities, maybe they couldn't deal with the horses or they couldn't fix them or they didn't have time or, whatever it is, we would get those horses and we would fix them. And then they would go into their next career or continue whatever their career they were doing, but they would be better.
Now, you said your sister wasn't into team sports or played them. Did you outside of polo growing up?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I started playing polo when I was 8 and I loved it. It was great. And then there's that thing of becoming a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, polo, this is stupid. I hate it. So I played, but with sort of this teenager, like, this is stupid. I don't need to do
That
this.
teenager chip on your shoulder. You're
Yeah,
arrogant.
yeah. Exactly. So for about 2 years, I would ride and I would stick and ball, but I was more into track. I tried softball kind of stuff. And I was like, this is stupid. I'm going to go back to polo.
I take no insult to that because I was track and field all the way through college. So,
Yeah.
but that's an individual sport.
As an individual. And that's exactly what it was. I was like, this is lame.
But I can understand like softball, the pace of play there is like, really? Hit the damn ball to me.
Yeah, exactly. And so then I picked it back up, graduated high school, and then really started playing again when I went to CSU. So I went up to CSU, and the first year I had to go to UNC, University of Northern Colorado, Greeley. And, mom and dad, they said, well, you got to spend a year away from horses, focus on school. And I was like, again, teenager. I'm like, that's stupid. I don't need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were right. So I went up to Greeley, got a 4.0, it was great. And then that was the plan, was then to transfer to CSU my sophomore year. And, my advice out there for the young kids going to school would be, don't major in polo or socializing. I had a great time playing polo and a great social life, but I had to pick up the books a little bit.
What did you study in college?
So I went in as a biochemistry major.
What?
Yeah. I love the body and I love science. And so I went in as a biochem major. And then I started to realize, I'm like, I don't want to be a researcher. I don't want to be a doctor and be in school, until now. I want to live life. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to try to get out of here and get the piece of paper as fast as I can. And so it was a requirement at CSU. You had to take a speech communication class. And I was like, well, I talk good. So how come I can't do that? Fine, I'm going to ace this class.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, fine. I took the speech communication class and I loved it. It was so fun. They were my people. And so I actually graduated speech communication and tech journalism. And it was great. I loved it. It was great. Had a chance to play polo, get the degree.
Do you practice those things still or no?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, for me in college, like the first 2 years of college is learning a lot about yourself. Right. And so, the first year I hated everybody around me. And so I just buried myself in school. So you learn that about yourself. Then it was polar opposite my second year and the school kind of suffered, but my social life was great. So those first 2 years away from mom and dad, and you learned a lot. And then the last 2 years really focusing then on speech communication and tech journalism. I mean, I use it all the time. I love people. I love knowing the stories. I love listening. I love telling stories. And so, like I said, those were my people. So I use it every day.
Now, going back to your polo, you said you started when you were about 8 years old. Who was your instructor? Was it your dad early on? And who kind of helped progress your game?
So funny enough, when I started playing, we had a pro. His name was Justo del Carril. And I don't know if you know Justo, but right now his son actually, he played with Valiente, but his son is maybe 20. But Justo, for me, I'll never forget those days in the summertime, and I'm just a little kid on these high-powered thoroughbred polo ponies. And I remember him running behind me on the field saying, go faster, go faster. And he would hit the ball up to me and I would hit it a couple of times and he'd go, go, go. and we would just race across the 4 polo fields. And he was instrumental. And not really knowing, a lot about Justo, or again, I was so young. It was fun for me. But now Justo, I know he's written one book. It's called Polo Tips, and it's great. A lot of the same stuff he taught me without even realizing that he sort of instilled that in me, I would use to teach. And then years later, he came out with a book with those same examples that he had taught me. So he is incredible. So I recommend everybody go out. It's just a simple book. It's very simply written, Polo Tips. But yeah, Justo del Carril, he was great. He was absolutely great.
He continued to instruct you for years and years ahead?
That's a funny question. So yeah, so as he would come back for the summers, then yes, I would take polo lessons from him. And then really, again, those teenager years, we would have other pros and stuff come in. And honestly, Daniel, I crave lessons and polo lessons. And really over the years, all the other pros, we never really had like a structured lesson or coaching moments. Everything was sort of in passing, or I'd watch them and pick certain things up. And now in my adult life, I really look back and I'm like, gosh, there was very few times out of all the polo that I've played and all the pros that we've had here that I've taken a structured lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I crave that, which is a little, again, it's very humbling because your muscle memory is one way and then trying to learn and tweak another way.
Yeah.
It's good to settle your ego.
And well, you're a certified instructor too, are you not?
Yep. So that was a fun program to go through with the USPA. There's no real standards. And so the USPA had a great idea of creating these standards. And that was the Certified Polo Instructor Program. And I was honored when they chose me. So they had called me up and they said, hey, we're going to do this program and we want you to be one of the first. Because I had taught lessons, when I was younger. Again, mom and dad never handed us anything, but they gave us opportunities. And so I taught pony camp when I was 14 years old. I ran 7 weeks of pony camp through the summertime. And that was how I was able to pay for my car and pay for college. So I had been teaching since I was 12 to then now have this program that the USPA had started. Again, I was honored because we're in a bubble here. And so it was nice to be able to get out and reconfirm what you've been teaching, but then learn the new tricks and learn what other people have done. Because really, at the end of the day, when you're teaching somebody, some people learn completely different. I might say heels down and you might say toes up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so as instructors, I love teaching. And it's so fun for me to see the light bulbs go off. And it doesn't matter if it's a little kid or if it's somebody who's been playing for a while, or even on the ground, watching people connect with their horses on the ground. I love it. I absolutely love it. And so that was a fun program to be a part of.
You're a very, very talented polo player. Don't let your big hair and flashiness fool anyone. You're a women's outdoor 5, right? And arena 8.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
And what is your general handicap?
1.5, which if anybody's listening, I'm totally fine if you want to move me down to 1. Even numbers, it's nice.
Why is there halves anyways to begin with?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Throw me to 1. It's great. We're good.
You are a very, very talented polo player, to say the least. And you actually bring up something very unique in the fact that you can be a very talented polo player, be an 8-goaler in arena and be a 5-goaler, but you still have to spend a lot of time perfecting your craft and your horsemanship skills, even going to other disciplines to better yourself on a horse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think that with anything, any sport that you play, if you want to get better, you have to put in the time and you have to have foundation before you can do the specific sport that you want to do. And it goes back and forth. If you don't do the foundation and you're constantly playing, those foundation pieces start to crumble.
Yeah.
And so you have to always be practicing and, getting your timing right, watching videos. And that's really with any sport. What is that book? 10,000 hours.
Yes. Malcolm Gladwell. Yep. I was about to bring that up. To be a perfect in anything, you have to commit 10,000 hours.
Yeah,
for it.
yeah.
I forget what athletes he mentioned. And then I also know that he said Bill Gates and Steve Jobs also did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It said 10,000 hours with the athlete is the same way. And I think,
But that's true, right? I mean, it really is. It's 10,000 hours and really maybe even more. I think polo, there are so many variables, where you take football, and again, there's no better or worse, but you just strip it all the way down to the pure variables that could happen within either sport. And there are so many variables inside the polo game that you can't ever really perfect it. And I think that's why it draws in the type of personality that it does, that type A, adrenaline junkie, somebody that has to keep their mind, you can't be passive. I love polo. And I always tell people that polo is like truth serum. As we get older, we can create and we can learn how to filter out and sort of put a mask up in front of people. But when you're on the polo field, there's no mask. There's no time to put up a mask. And so I'm sure you can think about in your games, the guy or girl who's so pleasant off the field, but then they get on the horse and on the field and you're like, what the hell happened to you? What is your problem? And that's their true inside self. There's no filters on the polo field. There's no time. And so I don't think you can perfect it. You can come close. You have all the greats, Memo Gracida and Cambiaso, Pelon, you have all these incredible players. But I think you ask them the same thing and they're still tweaking and working and fixing things. And I think it's just because there's so many variables.
Yeah. If you were to make a comparison, let's say, to that topic to another sport, look what Michael Jordan did to the game when he came in. Look what LeBron James or Kobe Bryant did the game to accelerate it beyond what their predecessors did, to take their sport to a whole entire new level of athleticism. So to your point, what you might see is relevant to that time period in terms of perfection.
Yeah.
During the Jack Nicklaus days, and then comes along Tiger Woods and takes it to a whole entire new level.
This podcast episode is presented by Global Polo TV. The world's premier destination for video on-demand polo content has arrived. Now you can watch the nation's best live and archive tournament matches and compelling behind-the-scenes content from anywhere at any time and on any digital device. Global Polo TV has over 9,000 subscribers, 200 plus hours of live broadcasted games, and over 500 hours of produced content from weekly shows to in-depth features. Sign up today. All on-demand polo games and content are free. Want to watch official USPA games live? Then get your Polo Pass today by visiting globalpolo.com so as not to miss this year's high goal season and upcoming 2021 Gauntlet of Polo. Welcome to Global Polo TV. How many horses do you own?
For us, our business is buying and selling horses. So at any given moment between the polo ponies and the hunter jumpers, we have anywhere from 50 to 60 in inventory. Mm-hmm. And again, like I had said before, for us, I wish on a selfish note, I could keep those good horses and accelerate my polo, but I'm always riding the young ones or the tricky ones. And then once they're not young and not tricky, then we find homes for them. And again, on either side, polo, hunter jumper, trails, the cute old lady who just wants to feed cookies and kisses. Every horse has a job. So I've had some personal horses over the year that I've kept. And the two for me, my first one was a horse when I was a teenager. His name was Nirvana. My dad, we buy lots of off the track thoroughbreds and we buy, 10 to 15 at a time. And my dad came home with a big trailer full and I'm 14 years old and he points to this beautiful dapple gray, typey thoroughbred who's weaving in his stall and sweating and, running around and bucking and kicking. He's like, Erica, that's the one I chose for you. I was like, oh, awesome, Dad. Great. And that was Nirvana. And I don't know, there was something special about him. And I think the time in my life and making him and learning about training horses and doing this and that. And he passed on, 10 years ago or so. But every time I would come out on the field with him, I was unstoppable. I was like 3 goals. It was incredible. And you have that trust and that connection with the horse, you're unstoppable. So out of the thousands of horses that, that we've found homes for, and thousands, not hundreds, Nirvana, he was one. And then one that just passed away. And it's hard to talk about her now because it's still so fresh. But her name was Suppressa. We called her Suppressa because I bought a horse from one of my friends, and the horse's name was Maddie. So I'm up grooming Maddie, same like I do with all the other horses. And for some reason, she just kept getting fatter and fatter. She didn't really have like a great top line. And I'm like, gosh, what is going on? This is crazy. Well, I'm up brushing Maddie and the baby kicks. And I was like, holy crap. I'm like, what was that? Did I just see that? So long story short, it was a buy one, get one free.
Were you thinking, how did this happen? Who's responsible for this?
Immaculate conception. What?
Who's the father?
Yeah. So out popped Suppressa. And I tell you, Daniel, again, just a horse that you feel when you're riding, you have wings. And we didn't know anything about babies. We don't deal with babies. We always get them when they're 3 or 4, sometimes 5, but not when they're first born. We're like, well, what the hell do we do with it? Like, what do you do with it? And so,
there should be a sponsor plug in there. Red Bull, if you're interested, Polo gives you wings.
Right? Yeah.
Polo gives you wings. There you go.
And so anyway, long story short, Suppressa, she was the same as Nirvana. Every time I was out in the field with her, she gave me wings. She was incredible. I was offered a lot of money for her, like 6 figures, and I turned it down. In the love line, it went Suppressa and my daughter, Sydney, were sort of maybe together. Sometimes they would switch back and forth, and then my husband, and then, the dogs and down. But Suppressa was, she was like my daughter.
Yeah.
But yeah, out of the thousands of horses, Nirvana and Suppressa are legends.
Yeah. Who's in your current lineup?
As far as horses?
Yeah, when you go to a polo game.
Well, all the baby horses that we have. There's a couple horses, again, the difficult ones I have right now, Emma and Go-Go. And Emma is a 16-hand bay thoroughbred mare who has so much power underneath her. And at the moment, we're just sort of taking a gap year. I think she's just a bit immature. And so teaching her how to jump, going down the trail, because, when she gets on the field, she doesn't know what to do with all of her power. But it's absolutely incredible. She's incredible. So Emma, and then I have another one. His name's Go-Go, and his paper name is Got to Go-Go. Sometimes I think he might be autistic. He's great, and then sometimes he's not so great. And so it's just giving him the confidence to tell him that he's great. And I would love to find them, their next forever home. But that's for us. I won't sell a horse if I don't, trust that person's going to be in their best interest.
Mm-hmm.
I love matchmaking. So it's tough, to say I have a perfect string. I don't. It always changes. I have a little horse that I bought from Mark Waits. She's little, but man, she has the attitude of a zebra. Her name's Boo. She's maybe pushing 14.3. She's a little paint. And there was a couple of times playing her last year where I almost felt Suppressa and Nirvana underneath me. She's very young,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I might hang on to her for a while. She's something special. She's small but mighty. She has the speed. She has the stop. That's incredible. For me, when I'm looking for a horse, I look for a horse that shuts down the whole engine, not just a stop slide on their butt, but the whole engine just sort of shuts down. I think every polo player is different. I'm sure what would be your favorite horse? Do you have a favorite one?
You know what? I'm still in my learning phases, to be honest with you. So I don't really have necessarily one polo or the next. I just remember, my gosh, I'm trying to think of when I took lessons from Don Healy. There was a pony that he put me on, and it was a beautiful chestnut mare. And I want to say it was like Biscuit or something like that, some common
Yeah.
name that you would normally hear in the world of any riding. Biscuit, I feel, is like one of probably the most common one that's out there.
Right.
But, out of like the three, I remember starting off with, this was the one that kind of molded with me in a way
Yeah.
where there didn't seem to be any sort of separation between my body and the saddle,
Yep.
where he would just kind of go, but at the same time would go at my pace. And if he would go faster, he seemed to know to back off a little bit based on my skill level. It was like, all right, I'm not going to go be chasing after the ball here at a full, gait. Let's pull it back here. The guy on top of me doesn't seem to know what he's doing. I mean, because I started riding when I was like 10 years old, and I went, at camp in northern Wisconsin and fell in love with horses, always loved them. And to be honest with you, had horses or polo been more accessible in my growing up in Wisconsin, I'd probably be more involved with it between when I was 15 years old to, when I got involved with the USPA. But for those 5 years when I started learning, it was like jumping on a bike again.
Yep.
When I had to. So all the things started to come back and get going. But what was more exciting is now I have a mallet in my hand. There's much more awareness and having being sharp. And then when Don Healy put me in an actual match per se, then that was fun.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is cool as shit. I'm sorry I could drop so many profanities right now in terms of how awesome it is.
I can see your eyes lighting up right now.
When I started working for the USPA, they're like, damn, once you get on a horse and you do this, you're going to be hooked. And it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
If you are a team sports, a bit of adrenaline junkie type of individual, and you find yourself on a 900,000 pound animal and you're brushing shoulders with others, and these horses are so instinctive and reactive to how you move the reins and your positioning on the body, it is so kick-ass.
Yeah, it's exhilarating.
No other sport other than maybe motorsports could possibly fill that type of gap.
100% right. You're 100% right.
And I tell people, I'm like, you have to do this. You have to get on a horse and try this. I swear to God, you're going to fall in love with it.
Yeah.
And there's something masculine and badass about it. And now when Yellowstone comes out on the Paramount Network, you feel more badass.
Right? Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, horses are such incredible creatures. And everybody from those horses that are those babysitters that you rode, that you felt like you were riding in them or with them rather than on top of them, those are unicorns, all the way up to the horses that you have, these top players. I don't necessarily watch the game. I watch the athletic ability of the horses.
Mm-hmm.
You watch the horse's shoulder or like their hindquarters. You can tell exactly what that player's thinking inside their head, those tiny little movements. And it's incredible. I mean, just like you were saying, it's badass. Mm-hmm. It really is an incredible sport that we get to play.
I remember we were filming the US Open Championship. I forget what year it was. And I was going around with kind of the B-roll camera, if you will.
Yep.
And I remember being in Valiante's corner and we were filming. So we got to see all the behind the scenes. So there's like 40, 60 horses there.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, this is the coolest spot to watch the match. I'm sorry. This is the paddocks of polo. And you can see these horses when they're all rare and ready to go, they get a pep in their step.
Yep.
And I just remember seeing, horses just, start to pick up their legs a little bit, starting to grunt, anticipating when Adolfo is coming off the field to jump on his pony and just take off.
Yeah.
For anyone who says like, oh, are the ponies into it? I'm like, hell yeah, they are. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The fact that they get to go out there and run with their friends.
Yeah.
And when you look at the drone shots of these things, it's like looking at horses in the wild to some degree.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So it's unbelievable to watch it from that perspective and seeing these horses just grunt and just get so anticipated as if we were watching a boxer, make its way to the ring.
Yeah.
They're ready to go out there. They're ready to fight. And when you see the horse and the player on top of each other working in unison with each other as if they have the same mind, it's pretty impressive. And then you see the athleticism of these horses too, able to stop at a dime and be able to take off and get to 30 miles per hour on a breakaway shot is incredible. And to be the athlete on top of that pony
Yeah.
is unreal. No offense, they don't have a lot of pads on them.
Yeah.
And they're flying down the field. I feel as though they're defying physics, they're defying gravity, they're defying all these types of sciences, which makes me want to put these athletes up against mainstream sports athletes any day of the week.
Yeah.
Sorry, their hand-eye coordination, their athleticism, their core, the ability to stand up. I'm sorry, I will put these guys in front of a professional baseball player any day of the week, any day.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And that's what it is. Those great horses have that same type A personality as the players. A passive, not confident horse doesn't make a great polo pony. And just like you were saying, like they're running around in the wild, it's the same.
Yeah.
There has to be a leader out there. And, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree between horse and rider.
But with a little cockiness and arrogance peppered in there.
100%. And a little bit of crazy. I think some of those top professionals in those extreme sports, your level of crazy is just a titch more than everybody else's.
Yeah.
And, that's what sets you apart. And it's the same thing for the horses.
Yeah.
They love it. They're so sensitive and so empathetic to our feelings, that if you get a testosterone guy or girl, who's about to jump on you, you can't take it personally, horse or human, it's a sport. What happens on the field stays on the field. Horses don't hold grudges. And this is the type of sport that you'll bump somebody hard or, yell at them or, there's this moment, on the field where it's like, this energy. And then you come off the field and like I said, then you sit on a bale of hay and drink a Corona and talk about all those wonderful plays that you guys just did, and, you really go to battle with and against each other. And then you come off as friends.
So we need more horses out there that are like Shaun White, Travis Pastrana, Tony Hawk.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Arrogant, defying the sports, doing tricks that are just mind-blowing.
Yep.
And being able to land them. Yeah.
Well, and you think about how the sport has evolved. I mean, with anything, evolution has increased the level of every sport. Like they say, comparing Babe Ruth to, some of the greats now. Would he really be great? Or I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing in polo. The polo players now, those professional polo players, they work out every day. They, just like a professional athlete. It doesn't matter whether you're a baseball player, football player, polo player, golfer, you have to work out to perform. Their work regimen is incredible. I mean, the horses are phenomenal creatures. Like you were just saying, they're going 35 miles an hour or as fast as a racehorse and then shutting down as quick as a reining horse. It's like doing suicides. Remember in gym, you to do suicides? I hated them. They were terrible. But imagine doing that for 7 minutes. You're like, whoa, these creatures are incredible.
In football, we had Iowas, which is the same thing as suicides, but you do it the length of a football field.
Oh, man, that's terrible.
I mean, and they're called Iowas, where, you're technically from. So
yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy.
So you have traveled all around the world playing polo. You represent and are a huge ambassador for women's polo, which for a while were and continues to be the fast and grow segment within the sport. Am I still correct?
Yep.
And obviously women's polo is incredibly entertaining. I mean, not just the competitiveness off the field, but you guys are incredibly entertaining off the field. Not just your flashy colors and everything, but the camaraderie between teams and what have you is incredibly visible. I want to say more than the men's side. Sorry, guys, but It's true. When we had the Women's Challenge Cup at the Oak Brook Polo Club this past summer, I literally needed to like call security to make sure that the women's were all socially distanced from each other because you guys were just having way too much fun.
Yeah. Don't forget, right? We do this all for fun.
Hmm.
I don't care what level polo you play. We do it for fun. Everybody gets
Hmm.
their yayas out. So yeah. 100%.
So, what is the status? Where is women's polo today than let's say where it was 3 years ago?
Women's polo, just like you were saying, it's the fastest growing sector or part of polo at the moment. So the numbers within the USPA, when the intercollegiate players, women polo players are a majority of the membership right now. And then regular membership is, I believe, at 47% men to women. And, I think that goes a little bit hand in hand with our culture. There are more women CEOs. There's more women that are the breadwinners, the decision makers, more type A personalities. And it's not like they weren't here before, but now they're celebrated and we're allowed to do things. Whereas before, that era of Sue Sally Hale and before, those guys worked so hard. It's not like we've evolved. It's they paved the way. They said, no, we're the same. You have all this sort of women's rights thing, things going on. And so I think culturally, that's where you've seen the shift. And then the growth on that for me in the women's committee. And I actually just last year passed the baton to Megan Gracita. But when Sunny handed me the reins of the women's committee, it was a time where I always explain it. Sue Sally and Sunny, they made the road to the city. And, they did curbs and sidewalks, streets, curbs, and sidewalks. And it was my job to put the infrastructure in and to build the houses and to build the city. And that's really what we did. We looked around. There was no acknowledgement really of women's polo. And I tell you, really up until last year, I had somebody walk up to me and they said, "Oh, I understand what the women's committee does now. I thought you guys just planned parties. I thought you were like a social committee. I didn't realize that you did all of these other things." And it hit me.
I had to first piss you off.
Well, of course it pissed me straight off. Yeah. I was like, well, yeah, we throw great parties and we can cook your dinner, but I can also run your business and run you out of business and be more competitive. But, but it was one of those things where I was like, wow, I had no idea that this whole time, Sunny Hale and Sue Sally, and I mean, even Carolyn Anye, these women just fighting up against this attitude of, oh my God, you're so cute in the kitchen. No, like we can be cute, but we can also punch you in the face, kind of,
Yeah. Hmm.
and, and do it with a smile. And so it was challenging at times, but I think because there was more openness within the culture, it was easier for me than it was for Sue Sally, Sunny, And so recognizing women within the sport that you don't have to be professional, you don't have to be Cambiaso, but there's this entire support staff of women, breeders, trainers, grooms that have been keeping the sport alive. And, kind of like a mom runs a household, it's just like a mom or a queen, quiet,
Yeah.
relaxed, and reserved in the back, and just making things happen and making sure that everybody has their place, they have their recognition. We've had more women's tournaments, women's leagues, and there's some women that frankly don't want to play with men because they have, just that testosterone feel, but they enjoy playing only with women. And so that's great, have that opportunity. And maybe that's the key word there is opportunity,
Yeah.
giving everybody their opportunity. And I think, really at the end of the day, acknowledging women, acknowledging that there is a place, acknowledging that women's polo, I think at the moment is a professional sport. For me at the moment, that's the hardest thing to overcome. So you have these professional polo players like Sarah Wiseman, Hazel Jackson, even our own Hope Ariano coming in as a professional polo player. But because she's female, she might get passed over or she might not get paid as much as the guy,
Mm-hmm.
So there is still a little bit of that, going on at the moment. But I think we're slowly starting to bridge that gap, and people are slowly starting to see that there are these big organizations behind women's polo and
Mm-hmm.
that it is professional. It's not just the Stepford wives getting
Yeah.
together for a little social giggle. This is how people put food on the table. And
Yeah.
I think slowly women's polo is starting to come around. And I've had the opportunity to be able to work with some incredible, incredible people within the USPA and outside of the USPA, men, women, and develop women's polo. It's not just me. Just like on the polo field, you have to build a great team in order to win and in order to succeed. And I look back at some of the advice and conversations, and whether heated or not, or, everybody's different personality. We have some incredible, incredible people within our sport.
Mm-hmm. Well, ladies out there, if you are listening, if you are looking for a hobby or recreational activity, polo is probably the best women's empowerment sport you could possibly think of.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really is. And I think that's with every horse sport, right? You have the horse equals you out,
Mm-hmm.
really at the end of the day, when I'm playing polo, whether it's men, women, it doesn't matter. The way I see everybody on the field, it's a brain. A brain
Yeah.
is a brain. It doesn't matter whether it's male or female. And I think, the horses do that. You'll have the little kids. I'm sure you've seen it too, where you have
Yeah.
these little kids kicking this grown person's butt all over the field. And it's purely because they know how to move the weight around differently.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that. At Oakbrook, we would Pamela Flanagan, who has, jumped in on Jim Jury's team, the Oakbrook polo team,
Yep.
and Grace Mudra as well. And Grace Mudra is what,
And those are
14, 15
two
years old.
incredible players. Yeah.
And I would get questions from the girls like, is that a girl out there, playing with the guys? I'm like, yeah. And you're probably going to see that she's probably a better horseman than half of those guys out there. You're not going to see any difference in the pace of game. And hell no. I mean, Pamela and Gracie, my God, they kick ass.
Well, and that's just that, right? You can never judge a book by its cover.
Never.
And so I think for me, horses create incredible humans. The gift of horses create incredible humans because it teaches you not to judge. The horses don't judge. And so you take cute Grace Mudra and beautiful inside and out Pam Flanagan, and you misjudge them because you're like, oh my God, you're so cute.
Yeah.
They are going to kick your ass.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is, again, I love that. There's Polo's truth serum.
Yeah.
Inside Pam, she's a hustler.
Yeah.
She's incredible. And it's the same with Grace Mudra.
And the same thing goes with age too. I remember an article came out, or I posted something like on social media, and Jim Jury was on the cover.
Yeah.
And I love the guy to death. And someone, makes a snarky little comment who's non-polar related, just like, oh, just a bunch of old guys. And I'm like, I chuckled and I said, like, come out to a polo match and you will not think this is not a bunch of old guys that are out there. Because if you are at the age that they are and can ride like they do,
yeah,
you're going to want to get on a treadmill now because these guys look like they're riding in their 30s and 20s.
Yep.
And they can turn on the adrenaline on and off whenever they feel like it, and they can take a fall as well.
Yeah.
And can your grandfather do that? Probably not.
Yeah.
So shut up and go back to your corner. So in recent years, you competed in the Argentine Women's Open, which is a new tournament, is it not?
Yeah, that was an incredible, incredible opportunity. Again, right? Women's polo is becoming more and more professional. And you have these top professionals that have daughters that now are interested in playing. And so, I had many conversations with Milo Fernandez Araujo, Cambiaso, when he was here, about creating a women's open in Argentina. And it would be right alongside the men's open on the Mecca of polo. right? So putting teams together and the highest levels. I'm not a millionaire. I don't do that. I can't. I'm a farm girl. But I wanted to support the cause and support everything. And so I help with a whole, getting a team together. And then they had 3 teams there. I called Don Jones and Tiffany Bush. And I was like, hey, what do you guys think? It's the first women's open in Argentina. It's going to be a lot of organization that we need, and it was such an incredible experience. Going back to that coaching, that I've never had that coaching. I was so fortunate to be in an organization and to have such incredible people around me to let me do that. Getting coached by Luis Echechereta and having the organization down in Lobos with Don Jones and everybody down in Lobos. I mean, it was incredible. And then the opportunity, Bob Janavis was so gracious. He said, Erica, I'll mount you. I'll give you horses. And he organized the horses for me. And I tell you, Daniel, it was incredible. The first couple of chuckers in the first practice riding these horses, it was like a 16-year-old in an F1 car.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I can drive, but I was grinding some gears for sure.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget one of the first games we played. Gosh, I think we played against a team that was maybe 12, 16 goals and mixed handicap. And Argentina, the polo is so different. Here we play more in that traditional diamond shape across the field. Where in Argentina, you don't stop. It's a flat out gallop in a circle, more or less, like in a giant oval, like a racetrack. So it took a little bit of getting used to. And in Argentina, on most of the fields, right behind the goalpost, there's something. Like in Palermo, there's the scoreboard, horses, spare horses, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I remember going to goal. I was like, oh man, this horse is maybe a little heavy to stop. So I'm going to start checking up around, 30 yards just before the goal. Well, again, at that level polo, you can't check up. Somebody's going to back it out. But I remember Robertito said to me, he's like, Erica, let the horse go, run through the goal. And I'm like, I won't be able to stop. It's going to take, he's like, run through the goal. You'll see. And Daniel, I'll never forget the feeling. I remember I was like, well, all right, here we go. And we're going flat out, 35 miles an hour, getting chased down, I think by Hazel or somebody like that. And I shoot to goal. And the second the horse crosses the end line, it was literally like a rocket engine, just like, just shut down. And all cylinders just shut down. And the horse came down to this quiet stop. And I remember looking around and I was like, did anybody else see that? Did you just see what this horse did? And it was...
You pulled some serious G's probably right there.
Oh, man, it was incredible. And so it's, it's those opportunities to be able to play on incredible fields with incredible players on incredible horses. This sport has given me a lot of gifts. I'm so lucky. And the incredible people within it. And I think that's, just like we were talking at the beginning, these guys that play the sport have the biggest hearts. And the polo player is that modern day cowboy. It's not some pompous asshole, that wants to gallivant around and hold his polo mallet up in the air.
Yeah. The lifestyle is attractive and there are those people.
Yeah. I mean, these guys, the actual polo player, they're incredible. They're so generous. I encourage anybody out there to be a part of it.
How did your team perform in the Argentine Open?
So we came in third. We were in the semifinals. We were playing against El Erstina. It was Clara Casino, Hazel Jackson, Leah, and I think it was Sarah Wiseman. And so we go out there and we had them. We were beating them. We were doing great. But Daniel, they had spare horses in every single corner of the field. And that tournament, that semifinal, we got out-horsed.
Yeah.
But it was an incredible team. It was an all-American team. Myself, Don Jones, Tiffany Bush, and Clarissa Echechereta. We did great. I think there was 6 teams all together, I believe. And even to make third place, We got beat out by El Erstina and La Dolfina, which we didn't have 100 horses.
Yeah. You were outmounted, which
Yeah.
if for anyone who's listening that's not in tune to the sport, I mean that's a critical factor into winning games.
Yeah.
It's just like motorsports, who's got the better engine and who's got the better engineers and so on and so forth that you don't really see behind the scenes. It's not just the driver.
Yeah.
What prompted you to start something like the Women's International Polo Network? How did that came to be?
Again, you look back and you sort of are in these moments of you're in it. And then you have to sit back and take a global view of, okay, what are we doing? What's needed? And it was really interesting in all my travels. There was, the same thing that happens with mixed polo. It's all about the big guys, the big guys. But really, 98, 99% of polo is not that. It's the polo player from Iowa traveling to Colorado and just wanting to play a couple of chukkers, but now on a global view. And so just like you were saying, these women's tournaments, that camaraderie and the celebration of humanity, right? Of just getting together. We would always joke it was the sisterhood of the traveling white pants because it didn't matter where you were in the world, whether you were in Jamaica or you were in England, Siren Sister, or Lobos, it didn't matter where you were. It was this common connection of polo. And so we decided to build a network that would put all those polo players together, where you could be that polo player from Iowa and you go to a business trip in Singapore. Well, now all of a sudden you have that family, you have that extended family. Whereas before, and even right now, polo is sort of this like weird anomaly, like, ooh, it's like the secret society of the skulls. So it's hard to get a hold of anybody at any club, or you have to know somebody. And for us, creating Women's International Polo Network is just what it's called. It's a network across the globe. We saw a need and we fixed it, putting a foundation in place where people can connect across the globe. If you want to go get instruction from Nina Clarkin, great. Well, now you have a way to access her without having to know those top players and to know somebody. That was our intent. And it's been incredible to see the experience and how it's connected people. And it all comes down to finances, hosting and building a website. It's expensive. And so we're in the process now of getting the funds because now we see this need for clubs. We have the individuals taken care of, but now clubs can share information. And if there's a club in Iowa that's hosting a clinic, maybe there's a person, again, from Malaysia who's traveling who wants to do that clinic. Well, yeah, let's advertise it. Each association has sort of their own bubble within their association, just like United States Polo Association. You can't access that information unless you're a member. Well, maybe that person just starting out, maybe they don't even know if they want to become a member until they go do this clinic or, whatever it is. And so this is just a connection.
What's next for women's polo, either for the USPA, and where do you hope to see women's polo accomplish in the future?
World domination. No, I'm just kidding. As I sit here and pet my cat.
Yeah.
You have to move forward with whatever project you're doing and the way to accomplish things with grace and dignity. So we'll continue to build that foundation, enhancing women's clinics, women's leagues, and facilitating women's polo, whether it's financially, whether it's through education. And again, then that professionalism, umpiring, being treated fairly in all levels of polo and really just approaching everything from all sides so that the sustainability of women's polo continues. It's not just a fad. And so we are here to help facilitate and to help women's polo grow. So you'll see a lot more women's leagues throughout the country. If there's not a league in your area, you'll have documents and ways to help build a league, more ways to connect with us. And I really think player development is a big part of women's polo. It's all about tournaments. And that's kind of where it was, where we now have the Texas Open because we moved the US Open to Florida, and the Pacific Coast Open and the East Coast Open. That took a lot of work and coordination between all those clubs. And then globally, to create this global calendar of tournaments so that you can have these women polo players go from the Texas Open to the Argentine Open, then to the Pacific Coast Open, and they sort of move around. So globally, no tournaments overlap. But now you look at development and how do we take polo to that next level, women's polo to that next level? And again, I think that goes within mixed polo as well, right? I think development is something you're going to hear a lot of, like I said, lessons, clinics, stuff like that. Nobody should ever plateau in whatever their project is. So just keep growing.
Is there anything that you see in other women's sports that you would love to adopt for polo and kind of mold it into polo? I mean, that could be anything from events to stats to player development or what have you.
I think for me, it's not necessarily women's polo specific. I think polo in general, really educating people that it's not a rich man's sport. It's an adrenaline junkie sport. It's a thinking person's sport. And however, that is, like at our club, we have all sorts of different ideas and events to bring people into polo. And I think just continuing to knock down those misconceptions of what polo is, instead of a champagne divot stomp, why not have a Budweiser divot stomp, microbrew stomp? It doesn't have to be champagne. And so just little things like that sort of chip at that wall of misconception.
Yeah.
And I think from there, the sport itself will promote, whether it's women's polo, intercollegiate polo, because polo, there's no age. It doesn't matter. And so I think if we just promote polo in general, everything will sort of fall into place.
What kind of things are you doing in Denver? You're the circuit governor of the Rocky Mountain Circuit.
Yep.
I want to give you the opportunity to tout your circuit and the clubs within you. So you have, obviously, the Ganseys are there, the Genarvises are there, you're there. You have a lot of family, the Waits family that comes up, I know, from Jamaica to play there. So you got a lot of good things going.
Yeah.
Polo Fest was something that was really big and exciting to see, and bringing together music and polo and introducing young people to the sport. What do you got going on out there in the Rocky Mountains?
So, for us in the Rocky Mountains, Colorado's an incredible, incredible state. Honestly, we could do polo all year round. The sun's always shining in Colorado. And we have some great polo players. And I always describe summer polo, it's like vacation polo. So you can come to Denver and you can play 0-goal polo or you can play 20-goal polo. It's really whatever your cup of tea, anything in between, because we have such incredible organizations here. The Ganseys have a great thing going up in Aspen. They've done an incredible job of growing polo up in Aspen. They play July and August up there. A lot of guys will come through Denver, whether they're coming from Wyoming or Texas, and they'll stay with us the month of June, and then they'll maybe go up there, or maybe they'll come back down. It's really, like I was saying before, of course you can. Yeah, if you can dream it up, we can make it happen here in Colorado. We have the Genovis family who we partner with. They have their 2 fields and we have our 2 fields. We're 10 minutes apart. So those guys that are just getting into polo can see Cambiaso live right there, and talk to him and make it touchable and tangible. We have lots of tournaments indoor tournaments, outdoor tournaments. We have a great club up in Boulder, Left Hand Polo Club, and they do kind of the same thing as us down here. It's honestly, it's one big happy family. All the clubs get along. There's cross-pollination. If I bring in a new player, I encourage them, go up to Aspen, go talk to Melissa. They have awesome horses, they have a good program, and vice versa. Denver's a great place to play polo.
Well, it's a great place to be. I mean, just in general, I think Denver is one of like the highest places that people are moving to.
Yeah.
Something like that, like among millennials or something crazy like that.
Like I'm going to go skiing this weekend. It's an hour away. Vail's an hour away, and you can golf and ski in the same day. Or you can play polo and your family can go shopping or go hiking or kayaking or whitewater rafting. It's a really great state. And then, the restaurants, we have incredible restaurants in Denver. I think people sometimes mistake Denver for this sort of old West rancher town, but we have some pretty posh restaurants.
I love it. I love it. Well, Erica, it was a pleasure speaking with you and getting to know you. Your passion is splattered all over this podcast in regards to polo. So it's exciting. You are my last interview of season 1. So we are ending our first season of Outside the Boards on a very, very high note. You do incredible things for your circuit. You do incredible things for polo, especially women's polo. Excited to see where that goes and into the future. I mean, with the Argentine Women's Open and the U.S. Women's Open, it's going where it should be going. And excited to see more women brought into the sport and do some incredible things. Hopefully we're going to see you guys on the cover of ESPN magazine, probably before the men.
I love it.
Yeah. So a pleasure, Erica. I think we're probably going to have to bring you back for season 2 because I think we have a lot more to talk about.
Oh, well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be able to talk with you and share the sport I love. I don't think I've stopped smiling this entire interview.
There you go. We love to talk about it. That's for sure. Who doesn't? Look, I came from mainstream sports and I used to talk about all the time. And people always ask me, Dan, why are you in polo? How the heck did you get into polo? I could spend 2 hours with you talking to you as to why.
Yeah.
And polo has embraced me. It's made incredible friends, visited incredible destinations, and it's treated me well. And like you, it has done the same. Yeah. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Until next time, Erica.
Thank you so much. Cheers to the polo family.
This podcast episode is presented by Global Polo TV. The world's premier destination for video on-demand polo content has arrived. Now you can watch the nation's best live and archive tournament matches and compelling behind-the-scenes content from anywhere at any time and on any digital device. Global Polo TV has over 9,000 subscribers, 200 plus hours of live broadcasted games, and over 500 hours of produced content from weekly shows to in-depth features. Sign up today. All on-demand polo games and content are free. Want to watch official USPA games live? Then get your Polo Pass today by visiting globalpolo.com so as not to miss this year's high goal season and upcoming 2021 Gauntlet of Polo. Welcome to Global Polo TV. Now we have reached the part of the show where we address outside the boards issues affecting the sport of polo, with the sharing of insights, ideas, and best practices towards solving everyday marketing, branding, and sponsorship problems, avoiding bad habits, or helping to navigate through new trends and how to best leverage those opportunities. Hi everyone, on this episode for Insights, I'm not going to actually talk about one specific topic or subject. Being this is the last podcast of our first season, I just wanted to let all the polo clubs know, players and what have you, that to be optimistic and excited for polo. Given the pandemic, I know it's been hard on a lot of people, depending upon the state that you're in. Some have been more restrictive than others. With the high goal season starting to begin to come to a close and the summer season polo clubs starting to emerge, everyone, I think, is going to have a great and successful year. People are eager to get outside. They want to do something with family and friends and get back together with not having all these restrictions in place. And to be honest with you, the best thing I can think of for people to attend that has a great long afternoon outside with good fruits, cocktails, champagne, and friends is polo. And I encourage every one of you to take full advantage of that opportunity and the story polo has to get people back and outside and back to normal. So I encourage you to leverage that narrative. I wish everyone the best of luck. We are going to have a great summer polo season. I know we have one geared up and excited for Chicago up here among all our polo clubs. And I know that among other states that I've been speaking to and other clubs, past few months since the new year, everyone is excited to get back to normal as well. So again, wish everyone well. Thank you all for tuning in and listening to Season 1 podcast. It has been fantastic. It has been a fun experience getting to know so many different people. Great Season 2 starting to line up with some incredible guests from around the world and who have significant impacts in our sport. So yeah, thank you everyone, and continue to listen, whether you are on the road transporting horses from one club to another or from one season to another. This is a great listening opportunity to really immerse yourself in some great leaders within the world of polo. So again, thank you everyone, and thank you for those who have given your support and guidance through the season. You know who you are, so special shout out to you. Thank you and enjoy. Take care. That was a great episode. What is the one thing you learned from today's conversation? If this episode had an impact on you in some way, then I encourage you to visit and subscribe to our website at OutsideTheFords.com for more episodes and interviews with incredible guests. Thanks for stopping by, my friends, and hope to see you on the polo field.